Welcome to the virtual exhibition of the new arts organization, the Inspiration Art Group International. We are honored and pleased to introduce our program host, Bettina Wilkerson, who we know and love as Poet Gold. She is one of New York State's esteemed poet laureates. Now over to you. Take it, Poet Gold.
Good morning, everyone, as we honor Women's History Month with a group of wonderful artists this morning. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. In our lives, there are blocks and walls, at times appearing insurmountable, yet we climb. Finding nooks and crannies to grab hold of, sink hooks into, gingerly we go. It's true. Patience is a virtue. Peaks take time to reach. Truth takes time to see. Hope moves us on so our fears can be overcome. I am an American woman, born in a place where oppression was and sometimes still is common practice, where women were considered not capable of, possessing a body and mind weaker than. The stars and stripes did not include our equal rights. But who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. There is still a movement that echoes the shouts of those who fought for national suffrage. There is still a movement to shatter the glass ceiling of economic deprivation. Break down the walls and the glass ceiling will fall. There is still a movement to stand for a fair and equitable life, representing those whose voices are suppressed. There's still a movement against the extremes who claim to be pro-life, and yet they oppress the rights of the life when it's born. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. 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 Does history take great pleasure in stories of subjugation, where dominance creates systemic social diseases, where humanity resists evolution, still building a country on terror and greed because of a subconscious fright of annihilation? What do you believe? Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Who moves the mountain? We move the mountain. Hello, I'm Poet Gold, and it gives me great pleasure as a founding member to introduce the launch of Inspiration Art Group International. It is a diverse collective of artists, United States and internationally, for positive interchange, collaboration, and fellowship. We welcome artists in all media to share, contemplate, create work, and communicate their artistic expressions. We not only inspire each other, but create a community across all borders and boundaries. We foster creativity and innovation for all ages through virtual and physical expeditions, performances, educational workshops, multimedia, poetry, and essays. It's about joy, hope, and creativity for you, our audience, and we, the artists. Today is our inaugural virtual exhibition, Breaking Free. Through the power of art with fiber, sculpture, photography, prose, and music, 4 American women passionately engage in a transformative conversation regarding women, equality, feminism, and the effects of the pandemic. This mesmerizing and evocative art presentation questions inequalities in women's lives by turning to early feminist philosophies and history for understanding and weaving all these into an art piece. You will meet the artist and our guest speaker, Dr. C. Nicole Mason, later for Q&A. So type in your questions in the chat and the comments, and we welcome it. This live virtual exhibition will be online for a year until March 12, 2023. And I would like to also mention that today on the East Coast, we're having inclement weather. So understand that there may be some slight technical interruptions. We have no control of that, but you're more than welcome to see the video once again once it is posted live to our YouTube page, as well as our website and our Facebook page. So for now, let's roll.
Through the power of art, we're engaging in a type of transformative conversation regarding women, the pandemic, feminism, and equality, so that we may give a voice to hope for a more equitable future, to finally break free.
In early civilizations, women were leaders, influencers, goddesses, and participated fully in all spheres of society. In modern history, women experienced a significant loss of power. Women and girls were oppressed, excluded from education, denied freedoms, rights, identity, property ownership, and financial independence.
Women were relegated to the private sphere of the home with very little role to play in public affairs. They were responsible for housekeeping, child-rearing, and caregiving. They were targeted as possessions, victims of discrimination, harassment, molestation, or rape, subject of the male gaze. In art, they were used as models. In 1989, less than 5% of artists in the modern section of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were women, but 85% of the nudes were female.
Women were making gains incrementally through the years, albeit very slowly. The world was eagerly anticipating the year 2020 for even more breakthroughs for women's rights. Then the pandemic hit. Life was never the same again. In many ways, the pandemic was a gift. It gave us a major slap in the face, opened our eyes, and uncovered the long-standing cultural and structural root causes to what is happening with our economy and women. But the isolation was debilitating to the psyche of everyone, especially women.
The impact of isolation and confinement during the lockdown curtailed our freedoms even more. With socializations restricted and economic survival at risk, we sought introspection and contemplation of our situation and well-being.
The issue of feminism has been brought to the forefront to address not only the financial and emotional impact of the pandemic, but also the myriad issues women faced disproportionately with the lockdown. With all the responsibilities women had to take on during the pandemic, something had to give. And one of them was women's hard-earned economic progress. Many women had to leave the workforce. Have we entered a new era of gender inequality?
Women are paying a steep price. The initial wave of the pandemic sent the unemployment rate soaring, and more so for women as the economy started to recover in late 2021. Unemployment went down, but it continued at historically high levels, with 8 million women still unemployed and looking for work. Employment in the service industries, education and health services, which are dominated by women in the lower income strata, continue to be disproportionately affected. Women's employment is still substantially below the pre-COVID level. The slow recovery in child care services highlights the difficulties faced by many parents, especially women, in returning to the workforce as the economy reopens.
All the gains women had strived for to achieve equality in the workplace are at risk. The economic shutdown was not of their choosing, but they paid the price in loss of income and health care. Many women's slide into poverty is now a reality. They lost not only current and future income, but also retirement income.
Who are advocating for women? Who continues to put a gender lens on the response and recovery to COVID-19 ensuring that the unique needs of girls and women are addressed. Women are at the core of the fight against the COVID-19 crisis. The profound shock of the pandemic on the economic well-being of women has pushed feminism to the forefront.
What is feminism? It is the belief in full economic, social, and political equality for women. Why is the quest for gender equality and opportunity so elusive? What is the basis for this prejudice?
A modern feminist, François Paulin de la Barre, a French philosopher born in 1648, was rediscovered and rescued from obscurity in the 20th century by feminist researchers and writers. Paulin followed in the footsteps of the first feminist philosopher, Christine de Pizan, in 15th century France, who challenged prevailing attitudes toward women with a bold call for female education. Paulin was way ahead of his time and even ours. He was only 24 in 1671 when he published the first of 3 treatises on the equality of the two sexes. His vision was universal equality for all, and his vision of equality begins with women and girls. His declaration, "The mind has no sex," was revolutionary. He believed that inequality is not natural, and neither is the male sex oppressive by nature. His philosophy is considered today as breathtaking in its audacity.
Paulin claimed that the foundations of prejudice against the abilities of women are based on self-interest and social customs.
Prejudices about the inferiority of women are difficult to overcome as they are shared by both men and women. Paulin calls this internalized prejudice.
The oppression of women by economic and political power will be eradicated only when women stop internalizing this inferior status.
All these prejudices are harder to eradicate as they are not based on reason. We see that in our society today.
The feminist icon of the 20th century, Simone de Beauvoir, quoted Paulin heavily in her book. Her most memorable quote from him was, "One is not born, but rather becomes woman." She gave voice and power to many women. Unfortunately, she denigrated motherhood and marriage as traps to the advancement of women in the workplace. The feminist movement seems to have espoused paid work and career as the primary badge of equality. Capitalism gives value only to activities that can be monetized.
In comparison, Paulin's claim is revolutionary, that motherhood and caregiving are worthy of respect. Women's nurturing work should be elevated, not debased. He argues we could do without princes, soldiers, and tradesmen, but we cannot do without women in our childhood. Motherhood should be given equal value as ruling and judging. Mothers are the first leaders, caretakers, and teachers. Society should ask the question, how do we support them?
With women compelled to take command of unpaid caregiving, they sacrificed career, financial security, and their well-being. The lockdown and the pandemic exacerbated this issue. It is more urgent and imperative that we address it today.
I found my voice in the classroom, in the boardroom, in every room I inhabit. My voice is power. Paulin's most important contribution is his demand that women and men have equal right to knowledge and opportunity.
How many girls and women remain in the mire today when they might have distinguished themselves if they were given encouragement? When do men and women stop trying to be the way people define them? Why should women be in a box and not be free to fly? Girls must not fear risk-taking, adventure, or leadership. The search for a just and equal society is possible only by getting completely rid of prejudice. To break free.
Even before the pandemic, women struggled with balancing career, family, childcare, elder care, and household chores. There seemed to be no time for self. Women had limited possibilities because of their commitments. Often, they had to choose between career or taking care of their families. The lack of affordable childcare hit hard. Then the COVID pandemic changed our world. The severity and danger of the pandemic became clear. Many of the support systems women relied on collapsed. Cassandra, from Greek mythology, was a clairvoyant whose warnings fell on deaf ears. There had been Cassandra warnings that laws were needed to support maternity leave, childcare, equal pay, elder care, and laws to curb sexual harassment of women. The devastating effects of the COVID crisis on women made these warnings more urgent. Women's income and careers suffered greatly and will not recover without substantial help. There are other areas in which women also need additional support. For many, many women, managing their daily commitments has been overwhelming. Their personal freedoms are gone. They feel trapped. Women have been and are targets of violence during war and during peacetime. Domestic violence has taken a sharp upturn during the pandemic. Addiction has become a major problem in our society. The imposed isolation during the pandemic created havoc with the support system for recovering sufferers. The rate of relapses and overdoses skyrocketed. The pandemic totally overburdened the already at capacity healthcare system. Many tests, treatments, even chemotherapy and surgeries had to be delayed. This added to the stress and unfavorable outcome for many patients. There used to be a law that required hospitals to plan for emergencies. This law should be revisited. Pregnancy in itself is hard on the mother's body, but without adequate maternity leave, her recovery is so much harder and longer. Will society become more supportive of mothers, or will women still have to hide to feed their children? Will there be increased support for children and affordable childcare? Will the balancing act become easier and stability achieved? Is it not finally time for women to climb out of the box? Equality of the sexes would be a long overdue adjustment in our society. With support to create a more equal playing field, women can break free and fulfill their potential.
To break free. This presentation is a collaboration of 4 American women who feel passionately that women are assuming the brunt of responsibility during this pandemic. Through the power of art, our mission is to inform, to understand, to advocate. The medium used by an artist encompasses an inner language. In this collaboration, we use fabric that shimmers, that moves freely, captures being in flight. The cocoons suggest both protection and isolation. But when you peer inside, there is beauty waiting to break free. We use clay to convey various opposing emotions, like joy and anger, tenderness and rejection. Clay, in the hands of the artist, creates a birth and a transformation. And so through fabric art and clay sculptures, accompanied by prose and music, we begin this transformative conversation. I am Leonie Castelino, a contemporary Bojagi fiber artist.
I am Esmeralda Lin, Professor Emerita of Finance, researcher, and writer.
I am Irene Osborn, a ceramic sculptor.
I am Bibiana Huang Matheis.
Recently named one of the world's 50 greatest leaders by Fortune magazine, Dr. C. Nicole Mason is the president and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research. For the past 2 decades, Dr. Mason has spearheaded research on issues relating to gender and racial equity, policy formation, political participation among women, and communities of color. At the start of the pandemic, she coined the term "she-cession" to describe the disproportionate impact of the employment and income losses on women during this crisis.
My name is C. Nicole Mason, and I'm the president and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research, a leading think tank in the U.S. committed to winning economic security for all women and building their power and influence in society. In January 2020, we were celebrating an important milestone. For the first time in more than a decade, women made up more than 50% of the U.S. workforce. The booming economy at the time that we were celebrating was made possible in part by women. Then something happened. A pandemic swept across the nation, all but wiping out those gains. In March 2020, the economy shed more than 40 million jobs, and women bore more than 70% of those losses. Nearly 4 in 10 women's jobs have been adversely impacted by the pandemic. In February 2020, the unemployment rate for women was about 4%. By March of that same year, it was a historic 14%. For Black and Latino women, the numbers were slightly higher, 16.7% and 18.9% respectively. For workers with less than a high school education, the unemployment rate was 20%. And while the unemployment rate has fallen dramatically, we still have a long way to go for a full recovery for all women. It's been a long road and nearly 2 years since we made that milestone announcement about the progress of women in the workforce, and much has changed, and we've learned so much. The pandemic has forced us all in our private and professional lives to rethink work. For women, it brought to life the many conversations that we're having in public and private about our work-life balance and childcare. For the first time, women in the C-suite and women working in grocery stores across the country understood that being unable to do it all was less about our will and capacity to find more time in a day or to be better organized, but we were working in a system that was failing us, and it wasn't our fault. Now here we are with the opportunity to reimagine work, with an opportunity to create workplaces that work for most, if not all, workers. We can pass policies like paid sick and family medical leave. We can make childcare more affordable for families. Right now, families spend more than 30% of their income on care. We can pass laws that promote pay transparency and increase wages for all workers. We have an opportunity to dream big, make a new world. We're all on the front lines and have the power to make significant change. My hope is that we all see this moment as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to get it right, to create workplaces that are reflective of our values and where all people feel like they're compensated fairly and competitively, are treated with dignity and respect, where their skills and talents are put to use. It's really up to us to seize this moment.
Special thanks to our guest speaker, Dr. C. Nicole Mason. To know more about growing up in America and surviving against all odds, read her inspiring memoir, Born Bright. To know more about what she and her organization do to advance the status of women, visit their website, iwpr.org. Dr. Mason, you give us hope. There is a future.
We are proud to be art women at work.
What a wonderful short film. Absolutely. I'd like to bring Dr. Mason up to the front of the room. I believe that she is present. I have a question. Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing really well.
That's
Excited
wonderful.
to be here.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you here. I just have a quick question for you. You know, we salute you for your work, and as the current president and CEO of the Institute for Women's Policy Research, how do you think art can help in your work at the Institute for Women?
Well, I believe that art is another way, an expression of telling the stories of women. We can use data, we can use the numbers, we can crunch the numbers, but art gives us another entryway to understanding the experiences of women, one that's visual, one that women can connect directly to because they see themselves, and one that helps us to really shift the narrative around how we understand, again, women's experiences, but what we understand to be true.
Now you talked about switching the narrative. Presently, I know that you coined the saying "she session." Speaking about the disparities amongst women in the economic and the job force. Question for you: what roadblocks do you recognize that currently exist?
Well, many, again, what I really liked about the presentation is that we see that women's, struggle for equality has been, ongoing, historic. Many women throughout history have really attempted to chip away at women's inequality and, in the world, in the United States. And so what that does for me, one, is that it provides perspective. And so I know that it's a long arc, but the other thing it does is really helps and connect the fact that there's still so much to be done. We're still facing discrimination in the workforce. Women still, have barriers that include, not having adequate and reliable childcare, earnings, discrimination. I mean, it's just, in some instances, for me, sometimes it feels very overwhelming. I've been, doing this work for 20 years. But when I put it in a historical context and I see all the women working with their own skills and talents to raise awareness and chip away at the inequality, it makes me feel like I'm doing it in community and with a group of women, and we're all on the same purpose.
Well, I want to thank you for being present here today. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave, because I'm going to bring you back up later to ask another question. But what I'd like to do is bring the other artists from the exhibition forward, because I'd like to have a sort of like a Q&A with them. So can we get Bibiana and Irene and Esmeralda onto the screen? Bravo, ladies.
Thank you.
Very good. There's one line that jumps out at me. There is beauty waiting to break free. Wow. How did this collaboration begin? I guess, Leonie, I'll take you first.
We have to thank Bibiana because she was photographing a work of mine in the summer of 2020. And the topic for that exhibition was the effect of the pandemic on humanity. And that's the diptych with a photography of Dustin Osborn. He introduced me to Irene's sculptures. I shared them with Esmeralda. Both of them, the three of us connected because those sculptures spoke about what women were going through. And for
probably 15 months. The three of us have met every Monday for 2 hours, and today we're here with this presentation. But it's
Wonderful.
been a long conversation.
I'm sure. Irene, what has the experience been like for you?
Eye-opening, because I never did a collaboration. And it started out one way and it morphed, and the better we got to know each other and the problems and discussed. I think we had so many, we are so different from different backgrounds, but we had so many similar experiences that we discovered during our hour-long talks, that it sort of influenced our the end result. I mean, the problems that we saw and wanted to highlight. It was a fascinating experience.
So you found that place of, as I like to say, common ground, so to speak, in order to build this work. Esmeralda, what has your experience been?
Well, I'm really coming from a different world, so to speak, from the finance side.
Okay.
But my work as board director of IWPR made me very aware of what's going on with women. So it took a long time for me to understand the creative world. But our collaboration was based on mutual trust. I mean, I love these two women. I couldn't have worked with them if I didn't respect them and trusted them. So it was a real wonderful experience. And I hope it continues.
Absolutely. Well, the work is absolutely stunning and fabulous to watch and experience. Leonie and Irene, did you have a clear vision of what this art project would be about? I mean, how did it evolve? You talked about that a little bit, but can you give me a little more?
Well, I felt very strongly that what women were going through during this pandemic was what I had gone through 33 years ago when I had to give up work and I was at the peak of my career because my children needed me.
Okay.
So it was childcare.
Okay.
30 years later, nothing had changed. And when I saw Irene's sculptures, which was the experience that not what I had gone through 30 years ago, but what women were going through today.
Irene?
Same here. We started out, I think, envisioning it totally different from what it in the end result came, and that was a lovely journey to discover where to put the emphasis and what to leave out, and I just thought it was I feel like I made new friends, which is important and lovely.
Well, that's what art does. It brings people together. Even if there is a difference of opinion, it still brings people together. Esmeralda, what were the difficulties that you encountered in this process?
I think the difficulty is understanding the creative process. I had to be convinced that I'm also an artist. And even 6 months, 8 months into the collaboration, I kept saying, "But I'm not one of you." So that was the difficulty. But the thing is, the fact that these two women believed in me, that I had a contribution to make through my writing, through my research, through the feminist philosophy that I introduced to the collaboration. I felt that the difficulty was really erased towards the end of the collaboration. So I thank them for giving me the confidence that I belong to the world of the creatives.
Yes. And it basically, Esmeralda, you pulled it all together. Without you created the storyline for us.
it was hard, because Leonie kept saying we have to have a story, we have to have a story, and and that was the conversation that went on. You have the art, but the story had to be very clear, and the message had to be very clear.
Um, we need to pause for a minute to wait for Go to come in. She had lost power. So, do we have any questions from the audience, Bridget, that we could ask?
Could I just say that one of the main artists in this collaboration is Bibiana. She composed the music. This music is original to the collaboration. She watched the video and came up with that beautiful, evocative music, so to speak.
And more important, let me say that if it wasn't for Bibiana's faith in us as artists, she just gives you the freedom to run. And that, as well as the passionate belief that women need to have an opportunity to showcase their art, the belief that women need to have an art museum. And this is the tribute that I want to pay to Bibiana, because of if it was she brings artists together, she brings she opens up collaborations, just fosters creativity. So thank you, Bibiana.
Well, thank you. It was incredible pleasure to working with all three women. And I think that is the mission of our international art, inspiration art group, international, to foster joy, hope, and creativity, and to also provide this platform for artists can create and whatever they like to create. And I will find the best light and to show their work. And that's our dream and our hope in this, this institution. And also with the Art Women at Work, we all long time believe that we need to recognize and to empower and promote women's artistic achievement in all different creative media. And I think that's Power Go calling me. So I will answer later. And, because we have a cyclone experience in New York right now and along the East Coast. So I guess she lost power. And, because tree will fall down and things like this. But we do thank her for, she'll be able to open up the program for us and everything. And as I say before, the Art Women at Work has been along for a long time. And we are, looking for a permanent space. Hopefully we'll have a museum that we can do women's show, exhibit, all through the year, every day, not just in March, or March 8th, the International Women's Day, that we get to speak about those problems. We still have a long way to go. And we also, one objective is to archive and preserve the work of all those wonderful women artists. And so I do thank all three of you for coming out with this wonderful things and to be out in Broadgration, exhibit to opening up for us. And this is a beginning. And this show is going to be on for a whole year. And periodically, Esmeralda will have new essay and new insight that will contribute to this program. And we will bring in other women, real life women, and tell their story, how they go through the struggle during the pandemic. And so stay in tune. So this is not just happening at this half hour. It's going to continually happen throughout the years. And beside that, I guess I'd like to thank today for our engineer, Bridget, and Paul Gold, and the team of the volunteers and our founder for the Inspiration Art Group International. And right now, do we have any questions, Bridget, that you can show that maybe Leonie can look at those questions and people have for the for the artists here to answer. Bridget, and is there any questions? Well, while she's looking at questions, I'm going to tell you about all the things we have coming up on the international, this site, Inspiration Art Group International. And we are looking for submission for the May virtual exhibit. And we also seriously working on a physical exhibit called Address Earth. And the Address Earth will be, oh, look at that. We have Nicole join us now. I guess we lost her for a while. Now she's here. Welcome back. And we're doing a physical exhibit called the Art Expo. It's a physical exhibit. It will go and show throughout the Hudson Valley. And it will get kicked off at the Hudson Valley Museum of Contemporary Art. And hopefully we will find lots of different spaces all along the Hudson River, all the way up to Hudson, New York. And so, Nicole, since you're back, do you like to add something?
No, there was a question in the chat around whether or not IWPR conducts research on stay-at-home mothers. And so I wanted to answer that. The answer is we don't conduct research on stay-at-home mothers, but we do conduct research on how women spend their time and how it relates to the economy. So we do a lot of work and research, most recently, on women's unpaid labor, thinking about their unpaid labor and care work compared to their male counterparts, but no specific studies on stay-at-home moms specifically.
Let me just add something, since I have done the research on a lot of things going on in the art world. There's so much to do for the future of the artists. For example, the largest museums here in the United States, they have 85% of their artists are male. And 87% are male, and 85% are white. So it's still very, it's not diverse at all. And unfortunately, our beloved Met, they list all their artists every year, and there are only 7 female artists in that list at the Met. So we have to do a lot for the female artists in the United States. We don't know how to go about that, but I think that there is a future. And we also talk about women in the museum world. There is a glass ceiling and a sticky floor, in the sense that, most of the staff in museums are women, but the leadership is basically male. So again, the art world reflects what's going on in society, maybe even worse than what's going on average in society. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. As you notice, I'm already making myself part of the art world. These 2 women are to blame for that, but it's great that we are able to do something in the future. So I think that because we lost Bibiana, that this is the end of.
I'm still here, but I'm still here. I would just have to answer the phone. Poet Go's transmission blew up, so she had totally lost power.
You do have to then wrap it up, right?
Yeah. I guess there's a question there for all of us. What's your vision for the Inspiration Art Group International for the future? It's amazing cooperation. We would like to continue with this. And it's a platform for all the artists and all our members. Either you're a dancer, musicians, writers, 2D, 3D, we just cooperate and we can come out with all kinds of projects, and I welcome all kinds of projects. And we also like, volunteers, and we are just a grassroots organization, and you can help us, support us through our programming and stuff. And also we like to bring our programming to underserved community, and for children and to people 100 years old, that they can be able to create, because I believe creativity and love and just freed you and encompass all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bibiana. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. We are very grateful that you contributed to breaking free. Very important for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so it's a great project. So I guess anybody have more questions we need to answer, and that we need to. Here's a question. Anybody want to involve that? I would say this exhibit, we do have men involved, and we're never going to exclude men, even when we have our own physical art museum for women. We're always going to involve men. I'd
like to answer that question. The question is, how can the exhibit involve more men in the movement to break free? I think it comes down to information and understanding. And that's part of what we try to do in the exhibition. The first part of it is to understand what is the prejudice? Why are there so many barriers for women? And I think it's just not men, but it's men and women who've got to break free from the old prejudices, social customs of the way things were. And as we opened up, and in the words of Esmeralda, she said women were goddesses, women were looked up to. What happened? And I think that's part of what we've got to recapture. So it's not just women, but it's men and women, because we make up society. And our children is a future generation, and they're going to be the generation of change.
Well said.
Thank you.
So shall we wrap it up, Bibiana?
Yes, well, I guess. Thank you so much. And continue follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And our show is officially open now. And you can view the whole exhibit, one image at a time, on our website. And the whole presentation, the 20-minute presentation, will be on YouTube for you to view without the interfering that you experienced today with the SciComm wave experience. And again, I thanks to everybody, and love to people in Ukraine, and peace.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's open.